Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ISCIA Seminar, Games and Play. It is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Abigail Wiese, an academic, creative, and educator whose work focuses on South African theatre and performance. Now, Abby's research explores how the aesthetics of performance invite us to attend to effective encounters, embodied thinking, and everyday processes of meaning making. In her presentation today, Autoethnographic Reflections of a Researcher at Play, Abby will reflect on the role of playing in shaping memory, creativity, learning, and what it means to be a human. Drawing from moments across her life as a student, theatre educator, researcher, and most importantly, mother, she will consider how raising her son has reshaped her understanding of play and the relationship to her creative and intellectual practice. She will also reflect on why play can be overlooked in academic life, engaging with another of our presentations by Erin Smith, called Art for Relating to the Earth and Storytelling Under the Stars. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Abby.
Let me just go to my screen share so I can get my PowerPoint on. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me just go back because I was just testing out that everything worked. So in the spirit of the seminar series, I thought I would play a bit with how I approached this paper. This would be the first piece of academic writing where I didn't first rush to theoretical theorists to validate and seek confirmation of my biases for my own thoughts and ideas. I have instead chosen to format the presentation as an explorative discussion of moments of play that have made a lasting impression on me and helped delve my own inquiry around how I live and how I would like to live. I thought to start this discussion with a little video clip that I have of my son in a box with his ever obliging companion Watson and his oh so slightly left out playmate Pepper. But this was from a while ago. This is from 2020.
Well, Pepper also wants to get in now.
Pepper, Pepper.
Pepper, it's okay.
Give me, let me take a picture.
So just to give you a little bit of context from where this video comes from, it was 2020, the peak moments of COVID were surrounding me. I had been housebound for many weeks already. I was in the second year. No, I was in the third year of my, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, third year of my PhD was 2020. And it was a really difficult time with me having a 1-year-old. And my son is actually in a box that we got given by friends of us who had given us a care package because we had just, well, my husband had just been diagnosed with COVID and we didn't know any of the symptoms and what was going to happen with our little family. And I think this particular moment perhaps represents the most foundational elements of what play has brought to my life and my living of it. I think in this moment, just the pure sort of joy and delight of my son going around with our 2 dogs was a very simple act of game and playmaking, but within a very hostile and difficult and sort of harrowing time for me and my husband. And for me, it's these sort of glimmers that play and games started to evoke in me and sort of continue as a thread throughout my relationship with my son as he grew up. And as he grows up, I will show you a next video. So this is us now back. This is quite recent. This is 2025. So last year, one of the things that we love to do is play charades, and we have a little fire pit in our back garden. And this is a moment of where play has now led as a family of three.
I've said it again. I have to do it again.
You're being a dolphin. Fruit bat. You are.
So for some of you, this video might seem a bit bizarre and strange, but this is me trying to act out a fruit bat. Our house borders a rainforest, and during certain seasons in the year, we get crazy amounts of fruit bats in our trees, and they squeak and shout and make quite a raucous sound from the trees. But that was me impersonating a fruit bat for our charade series. And I think our life since the arrival of our son has been filled with play. I don't think a day passes where the request by our son to play goes unspoken. Play first looked like trips around the lounge in a box with our dog, while another chased you to get in. Then it was hide and seek with cloths covering our faces as we pretended to be someone else. Then it progressed to games like taco, goat, cheese, and pizza, Uno, memory game cards, Kiddle, Monopoly, Pokemon, chess, mousetrap, counting cars while driving distances, tag, hide, and seek. I thought about the hundreds of hours I had spent playing with my son, and in these collective hours, how I was being taught. When I initially saw the call come out for the seminar series, I immediately felt a pull towards it. I think sometimes the challenge of being many things to many people is that we often forget to value the parts that might not necessarily generate income or social prestige. Parenting, mothering, and child raising is one of those spaces where I can often feel socially sidelined. And thinking about play and games in relationship to my mothering journey, I felt deeply enriched when I saw how it had been so much a part of establishing my relationship and my connection to my son. In reflection now, I can see how I was being taught how to value the now, to focus only on the here and now. If I am for a moment distracted or not engaged in the game, I can't play it effectively. I need to be actively present in my interaction, something I think few people are experiencing in their day-to-day interactions with themselves or with other people. Play has often been the antidote in our household to an emotionally tiring day for both myself as a parent and for my developing son. Play has regulated us all. It was through play, through the act of focusing on small things in the now, that I felt calm. Yes, a state of calm, even amongst the mayhem of play. It was this feeling that induced an inner sense of hope, in that I could face the following moment with less overwhelm and fear. When I play, the persistent voice of self-doubt, judgment, and anxiety seems to still, quieten, and sometimes even fall into a state of silence. Play has been the space that has created a bubble of breathing, flexibility, flow, presence. It has trained me to stay with the moment, to really stay with the moment-to-moment details of life. I wondered what a home filled with laughter felt like. How might the memory of laughter live on? So when we think about play and games, the drama space and the theatre space and the drama classroom is always abuzz with plays and games. But I returned back to thinking about my theatre training as a UKZN undergrad, and I also did my honours program there. And I felt like I needed to give a little shout out to my alumni of UKZN, because in the drama world, our particular department doesn't get as much uh, um, uh, what's the airtime in our sort of art circle. And I thought back to a particular memory that I had of a theatre piece that I co-directed and co-devised, and there was a process of playmaking that we used, and the theatre making principle is called workshopping. And we worked a lot with improvisation. And there was one particular scene where we really tried to evoke a feeling of joy, freedom, naivety, and playfulness of childhood. And we had two performers in the scene devise the entire scene from childhood memories, of their own memories of play. And once the final scene had been sort of established, and they would recreate these moments. These moments had elements of hide and seek, impersonations of the two performers forming one walking giraffe, and their imaginative journey of flying an airplane. Now, I saw this piece acted out on stage many times, many, many times. But every time I saw that particular scene, it was as if my face just illuminated with a smile, and it was just this internal joy that needed to come onto my face, the sense of delight that was evoked through their particular performance of their own childhood memories that they had impersonated and brought out into their performance. And yeah, it was just every time I saw it, I will never forget how what they were doing on stage was making me feel a particular emotion. And that was something that immediately started to make me smile. And there was this feeling of warmth that surrounded me. Later on, I moved into the teaching classroom as a drama high school teacher. And one of my favorite teaching modules as a drama teacher was when we had to cover absurdism with our grade 12s. I decided to do a 2-hour practical workshop around ideas of clowning, slapstick, and I really tried to get them all to connect with their inner Charlie Chaplins. I started the workshop by improvising my own clowning routine in conjunction to a really playful and fun classical musical piece. I had taught them and discussed principles of clowning, and I knew that these clowning principles would work if I also used them in an improv state. I remember how I fully embraced the occasion and immersed myself in the world I was trying to create. I felt no embarrassment as a young teacher to a very opinionated and at times quite cruel adolescent class. I knew the principles would work, and one very important one was not to care about appearing stupid. After my performance, I felt a shift in my teaching relationship with the class. It was as if they started to trust me more, and I felt like they had shifted to actually believing I could teach them something. I still assign that experience as a foundational teaching moment. The drama classroom is filled with play and games, icebreaker strategies to build cohesion, group focus, group making unity, and collective practice. 2 simple strategies I used on repeat. There's a simple thing called when we would pass the clap around a circle in the group, or we would pass a pulse by pressing our hands against each other's hands. And it was always quite something to see how that simple strategy of getting the class to form a circle and doing pattern work. So we would sometimes pass a clap and I would have the clap on this side and I'd pass it to that side of the circle, or I'd pass it to the person next to me. And we would establish a pattern of passing the clap. And then we would introduce a next layer. It could be a ball that we passed and we would have to catch. And again, we would establish another pattern. Third, we could start with a word and someone would have to create a pattern with each of us saying one word. And in certain classes where there was great social cohesion and unity, their focus would get stronger and stronger, and we could actually go to 4 patterns and the class were able to hold it. And I think I love play and its effect in the teaching environment was because in a way for me, it was an imaginative imagining of a world where we could exist with social cohesion. And sometimes in my classes, and even sometimes it's really difficult classes with children that I found quite hard to manage at times, through these games, I could get these snippets and these moments of social cohesion and unity. And that was something I really loved and appreciated about the work that I did. When I returned to academia as a master's student at UCT, I think there was something about play that went to die. I devised a play with my husband called Sondrio, and we took it to the National Arts Festival. And I think within the space of my master's, we were like a joint program. There was also PhD students with me. I felt that that space to just play, and something that I'd been very used to as a undergrad at UKZN, I didn't feel that in that particular space. And it was actually perhaps at the end of my master's, I think the ability to sort of see myself as someone who made theatre or was a theatre maker. I didn't know if I could actually frame myself in that way, because it was sort of like I needed to know already. My creative practice needed to be established, and the space of doing my master's was rather a place to kind of showcase that establishment and not necessarily engage with the exploration of it. When I went on to do my PhD, I think one moment of playfulness amidst the sort of stress and difficulties of trying to get a thesis together was within my, I had 4 chapters and I had a 5th chapter that needed to get developed, but I didn't have enough time anymore to actually develop that 4th chapter. I mean, the 5th chapter. And a way of actually really introducing play and a sort of explorative, unconclusive process in my thesis was that I actually moved that underdeveloped chapter into my conclusion, which was quite unheard of. But my mentor at the time was really helpful in merging those two. So my conclusion actually had new ideas, new discussions, but it worked with my overall sort of thesis discussion of the fact that my argument was sort of unconclusive, and that within this conclusion itself, I was showing and highlighting how new ideas are constantly being generated. And this idea of coming to a resolution or coming to a finding wasn't necessarily the case or the purpose or the driving focus of my particular argument and discussion within my thesis. So it did work within the wider framing of my discussion, but it definitely was a moment of playfulness where I had to be imaginative and somewhat ingenious in trying to make something work, but know that it might not work at the same time. And linking to the sort of discussions around Aaron Smith's work, I have for a while been listening to some of the ISCIA Seminar papers by myself when I was saying to Jenna at the beginning that I've been drawing a lot, so I like to listen to things. And whilst I've been listening to the seminar papers, there's been this idea around a call and response, and it's a theatre principle that we've used. It's very influenced within the sub-Saharan context. It comes from oral storytelling. It's a statement of expression of community. It's meaningful. It's a feedback loop that is immediate. It's process orientated. And in its aesthetic, it is relational. And in 2 particular seminar presentations, I felt this call and response really coming to me whilst I was listening, and they were the works of Aaron Smith. And whilst I was listening to her 2 pieces, The Art for Relating to the Earth and Storytelling under the African Sky, particular works, and the kind of thing is that the aesthetic of the work felt incredibly playful, not just from a place of exploration, and that the exploration guides and drives her thinking practice. It felt honest, and in a way, her discussion detailed the moment-to-moment intervals of her research creation process, allowing us to remain present with her in moments of creative creation. I think on hearing her presentations, I felt a sense of creative and thus theoretical expansion, because the presentations weren't just trying to justify themselves through heavily underpinned theoretical discussions. Let me just get to this for a moment. In Erin's discussion, she reflects on a memory from a particular day when she was feeling rather exhausted and perhaps somewhat deflated with the state of the world. At the time, she was working on a site-specific artwork that worked with and were formed from materials she could find on a site. On that particular day, while she lay on her back, she looked up at the sky, and in looking up at the sky, she experienced many feelings she hoped to later replicate in her site-specific work. She noted how on that day she wrote the line, "My lungs filled the sky," in her journal. Soon thereafter, she started to see the so this particular line, "Fill my lungs with sky," I then changed and I wrote to "Fill my lungs with sky." And I have it in my little sort of study space, and I have it on the wall. And I then also have a reference to this particular image. Erin goes on to discuss a particular work called The Call, and she looks at, she creates an installation, site-specific installation, but she looks at the interaction of wildlife with her particular art piece of shrikes at the time. And after listening to her, I started collecting images on how animals interacted with pieces of nature that appeared sculptural. I went on to look at my phone after Erin's line about "my lungs filled the sky." And from then on, I have captured 633 images with clouds in them on my camera roll. And these are just some of the images that I've taken since thinking about this particular line. And that line, on many days, I have looked up and I've said that to myself as a sort of calming and a kind of mantra that has given me a presence in the day. And then this is a particular moving sort of piece that I want to play a sound to these videos. So I'm going to play this whilst you watch this. So I showed you two clips there. The one was from footage of clouds that I took when I returned back from South Africa at the end of 2024. I was already in Australia, and that was a flight that I had made from Durban after seeing my father for the last time, knowing that he was going to die from terminal brain cancer. And this footage was the last footage that I took when I lived in Cape Town before moving to Australia. And there was such, I think, this beauty and this majesty that I saw now in the clouds, and even in these very dire and sort of heart-wrenching moments, just as Erin had spoken about, my lungs fill with sky, my lungs do fill with sky, and giving me a sense of hope and peace and calm. The second piece that really spoke to me again with this call and response, that what Erin was doing there, it was evoking something in me, and I wanted to have this call and response relationship with Erin while she was speaking, was her second seminar presentation of Story Under the African Skies. And there were 3 lines that she speaks in this. And the first one was that really stuck with me. And that first one was, perhaps the reason we think the desert is brown is because all the colors are mixed together. Colors paint the desert floor. And yes, I did make something out there, and hopefully that is enough. And after hearing her seminar paper, I was out in the country here, and I hadn't seen the Milky Way in a really long time. This was just a picture taken from my phone, but this was the illumination of the night star, filled with this, with sky, and just seeing the Milky Way and all the stars was quite something. But we saw that whilst being seated next to this magnificent bonfire. And again, I couldn't remember when last I was next to such a humongous bonfire. And all of these pieces just sort of floating up into the sky, sort of like the stars that were drifting upwards. And I was thinking about Erin's image, the image that she had so beautifully painted in my mind's eye of the mantis in the Karoo skyline, where her whimsical shadow puppet played out forgotten and erased histories of the land while collaborating with the night sky stars. It brought such a sense of comfort and joy to me. I too think of this line when I look up to the sky. And this particular line that Erin had said, linked to a poem by Rebecca Elson called The Antidotes to Fear of Death. And the poem goes like this: sometimes as an antidote to fear of death, I eat the stars. Those nights lying on my back, I suck them from the quenching dark till they are all inside me, pepper hot and sharp. Sometimes instead I stir myself into a universe, still young, still warm as blood. No outer space, just space, the light of all the not yet stars, drifting like a bright mist, and all of us and everything already there, but unconstrained by form. And sometimes it's enough to lie down here on earth, beside our long ancestral bones, to walk across the cobble fields of our discarded skulls, each like a treasure, like a chrysalis, thinking whatever left these husks flew off on bright wings. Sometimes as an antidote to fear of death, I eat the stars. And that particular line of eating the stars, it just sort of really connected with me with what Erin was doing with her seminar paper and what I was seeing and feeling. That I too think of this line when I look up to the sky and take big gulps as I stand mesmerized by the vastness of the worlds out there. I eat the stars. And perhaps what that poem was also doing was that imagination is all we have to suggest alternative universes, a quality required for survival, for poetry, and for the hypothesis of science. That sometimes these lines of looking up to the sky to fill my lungs, to eat the stars, that sometimes they are the things that give me a sense of hope and calm, and sometimes really dreariful and dreadful circumstances that can surround our living. And this is just a quick cute little picture to finish off about just having a little sprinkle of whimsy on our day-to-day and to remember to play. That's my husband with my son and our chicken on top of him. And that is the conclusion of my discussion for today. So I await your perhaps call and response to me and what you might have been wanting to shout out immediately whilst I was saying certain things during the presentation. So the call and response I send out to my fellow listeners today.
Thanks so much, Abby. I've actually really missed your voice. The first time you presented when Andrea and I did the Power of Humor seminar, you did a presentation for that seminar, and I still said to you, oh my gosh, you should be reading storybooks and making audiobooks with your voice. I've missed it. It's great to hear again. And thank you for a fabulous, as always, a fabulous presentation, integrating so many of the seminar series and concepts that other people have spoken about into this presentation. And I'm also completely off the topic of academia, that so impressed with how your husband, your son, and even the chicken can balance. So that gave me a little giggle. I'm going to open up the floor, so to speak, to anyone with questions. Erin, you've put your camera on. Does that mean you have a question for Abby?
Maybe not so much a question, but a response to the call in response to the response to the call. Abby, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And I felt so, yeah, I felt your clap and your pulse. And that was really, really lovely. Thank you so much for responding also to my call. And I'm just very touched and pleased that the phrase the fill my lungs with sky has stuck with you, and it's a mantra that I use also every so now and then when I feel the need to calm myself. So I'm glad that it resonates. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Erin. If anyone has a question, you can just put well, not necessarily a question, but as Abby said, just a response to what she said, how it maybe affects your life. You've thought about something different. Feel free to just, I hear someone's voice, but I don't know whose. I'm looking on, I think Lawrence's.
Yes.
Yes, you have a question. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Okay. It's not a question, but a comment. I must say I enjoyed this presentation, especially the emphasis on imagination, the poem on imagination. It appears that, science, which depends on imagination, is somehow, trying to limit the positive gain that imagination offers humanity. And that particular, aspect of the presentation made me to feel like have serious value for the talk. Einstein says imagination is superior to knowledge. Imagination. And I think that, well, we may have to work harder to promote the art of imagining. The AI is there, technology is there, a lot of things are there, trying to say, this is it. This is what can be presented. This is what the world is all about. And then the art of thinking outside this is becoming a challenge. So I want to commend the presenter on for offering for, if you like, drawing our attention to that. The second thing I want to say is about color. I don't know, I'm trained in philosophy, and I think for the past 40 years of my life, everything has been philosophy. I'm thinking whether color should begin to assert itself as a separate domain of learning. We have domain that is studying time. Is it not possible that a particular investigation emerges, just studying color, because color sometimes means different things in different cultures, in different circumstances, and so on and so forth. So I think these are the things that I gained from this talk, and I must thank the presenter. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Lawrence. Abby, yes, go ahead. Do you want to speak back?
I mean, I think that is also just the sort of point that I was trying to do in the seminar presentation, is just this exploration of imagination, and where is imagination rooted, and where do we also kind of find ourselves being imaginative in our day-to-day. I think we often sort of reserve that to a childlike space, but it's so important. And I think when someone else is also imaginative or explorative in that, or creatively imaginative, what are the things that it sort of induces in you, and what are the buttressing of ideas that might be developed from that? And I think, yeah, that there is something to be said about imagination in relation to intellect and intelligence.
Thanks, Abby. I agree 100%. Lawrence, you made such good points. And definitely, strangely enough, Abby, how you ended off could have been the opening of a whole new seminar, because there is so much to unpack there. But I'm going to give someone else. Andrea, did you have a question?
Hi, yes, sorry, I can't put my hand up because somehow I'm host, so I don't get the hand up function. Abby, thank you. It was very, very inspiring, your talk. But one of the things, it's not about, one of the things that struck me, or two things actually. The first is, how do we bring play back into the academy? It was so depressing for you to say that play goes to die in the academy. And so that was the one thing that struck me. And the other thing that struck me a lot in what you were saying about play is the calming effect. Often you used the word calm down, calming, and I think that's one of the things that strikes me, is that we are living in an era of heightened and hyper anxiety, and maybe play is something that we need to take much more seriously, although that's already the wrong way of thinking about play. But those were the two things that struck me. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, bringing play back into the academy, and also this thing about anxiety in today's day and age.
It was a little bit of a challenge. I had lots of ideas and I only had 30 minutes. And the 30 minutes goes by super fast. So that, of course, there were things that I wanted to talk a lot more about, but it was sort of I also just want to kind of pin this idea and get the idea going. And I think, it might have just been my own kind of experience and take home of what it was for me when I was a master's student. But I feel like there's something in the academy that shifts perhaps in postgraduate level. I didn't really feel that when I was an undergrad or in my honors, but definitely when I shifted to masters, and then perhaps even with PhD, is the perceived point of arrival that I think is already there. That when you are doing this now postgraduate venture of a master's or a PhD, it's sort of you have already arrived. You already should know this. This should already be the kind of ability to make error or mistake, which was my experience as an undergrad, wasn't really the same. That girth wasn't afforded to me as a postgraduate, and I think it's also perhaps about egos and personalities, and perhaps that it takes a level of care also, I think, from the community that you're with to allow for students to still have that play and that exploration. I think it's hard to hold or facilitate space where we can be playful, where we can do things in error, in mistake, and that mistakes actually drive the process. That's the whole thing about play. That's why we laugh, is that mistakes are encouraged. And like the simple game of taco, goat, cheese, pizza, it's the mistakes that make us laugh, that make us feel unified. And I think when you enter sort of the academy or the institution, there's a grandeur in those spaces. There's already a presence of needing to have arrived, that the ability to have those mistakes and those errors, I don't think it's as easy to find. And I think that the point that you were saying about anxiety, I didn't know this about play until I had a child. It wasn't something, even though I've taught drama and I've studied it, actually having this constant sort of day-to-day connection with play, which has been my child's way of being and living in the world, I have tapped into and realized how much play is a calming thing, and that play is the thing that sort of diminishes the dread or the foreboding overwhelm that's to come, and I wonder how often people are engaged in moments of play. I think our family has really encouraged play and also to have these kinds of games that bring adults and children together and you bridge those sort of age divides. But I can see, like I mentioned, just like with moments of dysregulation, what play does in that, and how even a simple thing of like a game of tag and running and quickly dashing, or parents doing funny things like sprinting against each other, or the laughter that can erupt with us shaking or dancing, even simply just dancing in a group, but dancing with some sort of abandonment, that you're not dancing to look cool, that you're just, actually just like moving to the music. I definitely think it's an antidote to anxiety, and that you sleep better. Um, and yeah, it's like, that's why I say the thing just about laughter. I think for a long time I didn't laugh very much, but having a child around has definitely made me aware of that laughter and the kind of just beauty that comes in hearing laughter.
Wonderful. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm going to go to, there's some questions in the chat. So I'm going to call on Anzel and then Norbs, but I just want to mention two things quickly that came out of your conversation with Andrea. Talking about the academy, when I decided to do my PhD in stand-up comedy, it was not very well received because, in academia, we're supposed to be, especially in philosophy, we're supposed to be talking about very, very serious things. And I struggled to find a promoter. In the end, I had one promoter. I didn't even have a co-supervisor. So once again, just speaking to that. And then secondly, with having a child, I think it's this thing when you're an adult, you have the responsibility of having a certain bravado and having to act a certain way. And when you have a child, I feel like you almost have this permission to be silly again because you've been silly with your child. When they speak in funny voices, you speak back in funny voices. And if they want to play tag or hide and seek, you play with them. So it's a wonderful thing. Anyone who doesn't have kids, Abby and I might sound a bit crazy, but it's really nice. You can still do it even if you don't have kids. Never be afraid to look silly. I'm going to, Anzel, I'm going to let you speak. And then Nobs also had a question in the chat.
Hello. My question kind of ties in with Andrea's comment and also Jenna's comment too. I'd like to speak to your previous work on shame, in which you read shame as an affective, embodied encounter, and how it relates to your work on play. as another mode of embodied meaning making. I find I want to hold the two together because play seems to require the suspension of shame that your earlier work focuses on. The child at play is unashamed, and to play as an adult, especially in front of others, is to risk looking ridiculous. So I wonder whether the frivolity that academia attributes to play and the sense that it is beneath serious scholarship is really a shame mechanism, a way the discipline guards its own dignity by making playfulness embarrassing. And if that's right, does specifically your autoethnographic method, which exposes your own play so publicly, function as a deliberate refusal of that shame, almost as a kind of shameless scholarship?
I would have loved to have seen your face, Ansel, whilst you were saying that, because that was so beautiful. That was a excellent reflection on what I was trying to do and say. I think your theoretical and critical voice is extremely powerful. That was really, really a wonderful sort of summation of what I was trying to do. I think that's exactly it. I think when I talk about my master's experience, there's a lot of shame actually wrapped up in there. And it's a sort of shamed-induced state that you end up falling into and feeling when play, yay, when that's sort of we need to be silly, there needs to be frivolity, there needs to be some people don't laugh because they feel shame to open up their mouth. They feel ashamed of the sound of their laughter. And like being able to play, I think is an act of courage in some ways, because we can look stupid, we can appear dumb, we make errors, we look like it's a buffoonery that comes upon us. Like that's why I do the video clip of me being a bat. I'm, meant to be a performer and I look like some retarded person and I'm meant to be the person that charades as, like my natural, like my natural habitat is doing charades. And yet I stand up and this is to an audience of two, my son and my husband. So how less inclined are people to embrace the buffoonery of charades and play and silliness when I know what it takes of me to stand up there and say, but I actually love doing this. I like it. I like how it makes me feel when I act out these things. I also like it when I see my son confident enough to also stand up in front of us and do some silly things. If he doesn't see that within me, if he doesn't, and I think it is also always I spent a long time thinking about shame, and there is always that sort of circular tie back to shame as to why we might be not doing something, why we have banished certain things. And often it links back to shame or shamed memories or shamed moments or things we've thought and held about ourselves. Adults very seldom play. It's not something we do when we socially interact with one another. And it sort of speaks to perhaps our self-perception if we can't do that with one another. And where does that shift sort of happen? And I think like in our household, we really encourage play. So like even for our birthday parties, like my husband had his 40th this year, and we ask people who can to bring something to share. And some people will bring something to read, play the piano. I like to sing, so I will sing. But it kind of encourages people to then step up. And we like had one person who juggles and they were juggling. But they're also like an emergency physician as their day job. And now they're in the space and they're juggling. And I love those types of moments where people who hold these sort of socially high status jobs also showing that play is a part of them and that's something they really love doing. But we have very few moments where we get to do this. And we like to encourage those spaces and those opportunities for people, because we believe that it also shows other elements of you. And I like to see more of a person than just the job that they do and the work or their sort of, title that they hold in a workspace. But Ansel, please send what you wrote, what you said there, because that was really beautiful. Thank you. I really, really appreciated that reflection from you today. Really, thank you.
Yes, Ansel's just the best, isn't she? We have a process workshop every week, and she always has, like you say, great insight. And she's also always very helpful. So thanks, Ansel, again. Okay, Nobs had a question, or Nobs, if you want to speak to what you wrote in the chat, and then Gary, and then Linda.
Hi, Eb. Just did want to say thank you. Thank you for today, actually. I've received a lot of affirmations. I mean, we've had these conversations before, but a lot of us, we've grown. We're supposed to act in a certain way. I repeat, act, we behave in a certain way. And it's always been my joy because I disrupt all of that. Whether it's in a lecture hall full of 20-year-olds or in a classroom full of 11-year-olds, I play, especially with the younger students, I would play. And I think a lot of my colleagues would judge me for this. But I think, when you learn a language, it's already high stakes. It's a really stressful space and nobody wants to take a chance. But when you play with the students, they realize, they push past themselves. They engage with the culture of play, with the culture of the language that you're trying to teach them. And for me, it fosters, it's real education. It's not just a pen and paper, but it's an experience. So thank you for that affirmation, Ebs. And also with the journey of grief. Oh, friend. It's so hard to laugh, to smile when you are riddled with grief and you've lost somebody that just meant the world to you. But you just reminded me of how the importance of play and, watching the kids, my kids also just say things and do things without thinking, which makes me think of the person that I've lost and that moment of, or that opportunity to laugh instead of cry all the time and to experience different emotions because you've decided, excuse the noise, you decided to let go. So thanks, Ebs. Thank you, always, Thank you for your wisdom and for the affirmations. Yeah.
What a lovely friend to have, Abby.
Oh, thanks, Nobs. Thanks for being here. It's so nice. Thank you.
Before I move on to Linda, Gary's having technical problems. That's normally mine and Andrea's department. But Gary says, I'm reminded of watching groups of animals and how much they play. Walked alongside a pod of dolphins this morning that were having a joy in the waves. It's natural. Maybe in becoming adults, we opt out of play because we believe we must mostly or solely be dedicated to productive time. We become part of the Western production machine. If you have a response to that, Abby. I do agree, Gary.
I hadn't actually thought about animals at play. I think a lot about animals with grief. And just the other day, I saw some video footage of a dolphin and how she was grieving her stillborn baby, and she keeps the baby dolphin on her back for about 4 days. She carried her. So I love how animals can teach us about certain emotional states, but I didn't think about play. So I'll definitely look into that a bit more. Yeah, I mean, I said to Jenna at the beginning, I've been drawing a lot this year, and just drawing or spending time in an occupation or a labor that sometimes isn't like monetized, and because my art isn't selling, I don't have this particular amount of money that I can like attribute to the hours and hours that I spend. That even in that, even though I am actually being productive, people still sort of, it still has like a frivolousness to it because it hasn't materialized yet into monetized commodity. And I feel the pressure in that. So I think there is a lot of like sort of external pressures that are attached to just playing and not having that we don't have time to play in our day to day when we have the amount of demands from our job, and then also raising children, or we have maintenance on our households, we have to clean. There's many hours that are spent just in maintaining life.
Thanks, Abby. I'm going to hand over our last question to Linda. Are you still there, Linda? Oh, there we go.
Linda, you're still on mute. You're going to have to start again. We didn't hear anything.
Can you hear me? Yeah. It's a comment more than a question. Hi, Abby. It reminded me of, there's this book on improv, okay, so from a sort of theater and performance making thing, there's a book on improv where, so basically with improv, the rule is that you can't say no to an offer. Like if someone starts a sentence with I went to my grandmother's house, you have to carry on. So I think I was making connections between having to accept an offer and play. So basically, I wrote down keywords like just openness. So for me, play came with associations with openness, with vulnerability, and with attempts at relation. And I think play is also, it's sort of like a posture you have to choose, because I think the older you get, the more, you feel tied to being productive. So I think it's one of those choices you have to make, like in trying to attempt healthier social relations, or even just a healthier relation with yourself. Yeah, it's just a comment. Good to see you.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks for your feedback on that. I think your points about openness, vulnerability, and attempts at relation, I think that was why I said for me it was really interesting to see my relationship to play and my connection to my son. And I'm very interested in aesthetics of relation and relating, and that shame is an aesthetic of relation, that we won't experience shame if we don't seek out or have the desire for connection. So I'm always interested in these points of connection between people and relational aesthetics. And I think play is definitely that. It's that attempt to establish relation. And I think your final line about play is a posture you have to choose. It's an active state that you are choosing to, just like I said, for a long time, I felt like I didn't laugh. That again, it's an active choice that I'm making to laugh, to find the merriment, and to sound it out, to have that visceral, embodied connection to moments of laughter.
Thanks, Linda, and thanks, Abby. As we close today's seminar then, I think we can all adopt a posture of playfulness for this long weekend and go be silly this weekend, go have fun. If you have kids, go play with your kids, silly games, whatever you need to do to be calmer. What are the other words that Linda said? To be vulnerable. Abby, what else did Linda say? She was like vulnerable.
She said openness, vulnerability, attempts at relation, and play is a posture you have to choose.
There we go. and let's focus on relations this weekend. And then I just want to remind everyone that next week we won't be having a seminar series, but we'll be back the following week. Andrea, is there any last minute goodbyes or any last minute messages from you?
Just a complete second of what you said, that I think it's an order, if that's possible, that, sorry, that play has to happen in the next few days. And I hope that everyone will find some way to play. Abby, you're such an advocate for play. I'm completely kind of with you on that. And I just want to thank you for a wonderful presentation, and everybody have a playful weekend.